G'day, welcome to Mark and Sam After Work. Today I want to do a video a little bit about this rifle, or around this rifle. Now this is attached to the 22 cal at 3000 video that we did just a little while ago. And I suppose there's really 3 points in particular that come up. There were quite a few comments about, and it's something that I wanted to touch on because it's stuff that I think is valuable for everyone. We'll just start off with 22 cal at 3000. I wasn't designed to be clickbait or anything other than pointing out the fact that I was talking about this little tiny 22 cal projectile. So a 90 grain 22 cal that was going to go out there. That was the extreme thing I was really pushing on out there. Weren't sure whether we're going to be able to see impacts. There was other things that day came up with which involved the scope and what we're dealing with and the conditions and all the rest of it. But that's what I was trying to say. What I didn't realize is a lot of people hear 22 cal and think 22 long rifle. I don't know what the 22 250, 22 Swift, 22 Creedmoor, 223, all those other things people think are, but anyway, well, I'll leave that alone beyond that point. It was designed, like I said, I deliberately made that title there because it's about this little tiny bullet that's going out there. And yes, it is the 22 250. A lot of people didn't read in there, but the 22 250, which is not much different than a 308 neck down to a 22 cal, but that was the round, and it performed very, very, very well. It's sort of exceptionally well for what that day was. And I've been through, it was close enough to target to really moving into where needs slightly better conditions or a bit of luck. It was still down in a very low MOA for the distance that a 22 cal projectile was traveling. So I was very happy how it went. Those next bits that went into that were interesting, well, I suppose just before we do that, I'll go through a breakdown of the rifle and what we're actually using. It's probably a pretty good showcase of what we do in a moderate form. It's the MDT or the ORYX chassis, which are a nice little solid aluminium chassis, bit of this plastic stuff on the outside of them, but nice little strong, pretty budget sort of chassis. I have put some stuff inside it to stiffen it up a little bit in the front, so it just makes it a little bit more rigid. And then it's got my component D on the front of it with my Bipod system on there. It makes it shoot really nicely, and that score, I should say, it is all around the Howa 1500 action, which is the Howa 1500s are great value for money, really nice thing. Something that I thought was a investment cast, and I think I've mentioned the Howa action was investment cast. They're actually, when I do some reading more about it, is they're actually a forged action, so forged steel action. So they're really nice, they work really well, great money for value. It's got a barrel, and I've forgotten the brand, I'll put the brand of the barrel on there, but in 1 and 7.7 twist, in 27 inches long, and then one of my little 3-port muzzle brakes on it. So that's working really well, as you can see in the previous videos you've seen. And down the back, the bits we've bolted on here, or first off, I've taken off the butt pad, re-drilled it, and then raised it up to suit, to get a nice straight line of push. You can pull it back down if you want to. It's not adjustable in other than a bolting sense, but it gives that line of push where I want. And on this one, I think the later ones, they have holes drilled in them. On this one, I had to drill out the bottom of the buttstock here to mount one of my universal bag riders on there with a little insert in it. So that all worked as it should do and as our rifles do. Obviously sitting in one of my V4 adjustable bag bases, which gives me lots of control, good follow-up, all that sort of stuff. So anyway, that's the overview of the rifle. On top here, and probably the special bit on this, definitely the special bit on this, is the March Mini scope on here. Mini Genesis, I should say. Now this is the Mini, so this is a 50 mil. It's got up to 300 MOA of adjustment. The big Genesis has got another 100 MOA of adjustment and is in the 56. But this is one I really like in suiting this sort of, the amount of adjustment is still inside what is practical. And I suppose for people who don't know, this scope, well, listen, it adjusts. It's actually got, you always keep an optical center, so you're always looking dead straight through this scope. Where in a normal scope, you raise, when you raise your internal elevation, you move the erect tube, or inside there, you move your crosshairs essentially to look through different parts of your lens. So it goes from the top or the bottom of the focal area of your lenses. The best focal area in your lenses is straight through the center. This one keeps that, and what it does, as you noticed on the video, is when you adjust it, you adjust the whole scope. So the whole scope adjusts, and that moves into what you see, this extreme angle you see of this setup here, where you're moving the whole thing forward, which you're effectively doing that in an internal sense with a normal scope. Because we're doing it in an external sense like this, we end up with, there's more adjustment because the whole scope's moving, plus you keep this optical center going all the time, which gives you better quality, which will matter a little bit when I'm in the conversation. The other thing that was notable is when I flipped over the lens cap, these got little clicks to the hole down here, that happened. And people saw that, and a lot of people said, what's wrong with the scope? Is the scope not mounted? Is it loose? Is it coming loose? What's going on? No, that's actually the nature of how this works. The way the inside of your scopes work as well, of a normal scope that you can't move anything other than adjusting your dials, is there's springs inside there as well. So you have basically the adjustments are on basically a pin that's pushing on the shaft or pushing on the body here, and then it's held there with a spring. So it's not running on clearances or anything, it runs zero clearance, so it's all held in the same place, but there's a spring holding in that place. That's how this works, and that's what you saw when I adjusted that, or when I pushed down on it. I'm just making it click, and that enough pressure to make that move. So that's what you're looking at there. It is the way the scope worked. The other feature, I'll put that back down to 0. Yep. The other feature which I noticed and actually mentioned in the video is if you looked on the front, that clicks the same, on the front, and I've got the video on the image on the video there, there's this reducer ring, or I call it a light reducer. I think it's called a modifier ring, or modifier disc, I think it's called in March. There's various companies. Here's one that goes with the element optic scope, which goes in the front of that scope when I use it, but it basically reduces the aperture for the front of the scope. Now where that was relevant here, I'll put that away, where that was relevant here was those conditions we're in with a very bright, with the sun's behind us, it's on the target, nice bright target, nice bright field paddock that we're looking at and that sort of stuff there. There's a very bright image, but there's also a moderate mirage. Now the mirage was still usable, but it was at a moderate level, which meant that you put all that together and you start to really struggle to see those little tiny spikes. And you'll notice there's a couple of times in that video where I saw a spike that Sam didn't get to see. And that's quite the opposite of normal. But it was very much on that day enhanced by this light reducer. So I want to go through and explain what a light reducer is, what we're actually talking about. So to try and explain this in a logical sense without getting too camera orientated, this is about focal length, which is how fine a focus area you've got. It's also about, believe it or not, too much light and light noise and things like that. And I suppose the easiest way I can describe this thing here in a real layman's sense is it works a lot like your eye does. You'll notice that if you've paid attention to an animal's eye or a human eye or that side of things, is when it's in bright lights, then your pupil will be very small, so your iris is closed right up. When it's in very dark light, your pupil will be very, very large, and your iris is pulled back to let more light in. And that's because there's actually the right amount of light. We look at things with scopes and that sort of stuff. It's all about more light in, more clarity, the more light in, the better you'll see. Well, there's a point where that doesn't actually work. Now this involves the same thing as your eye, reducing it, and this also moves into depth of focus, which is relevant. But in this sort of situation, the main relevance we're talking about, and the whole reason that these little fellas have been designed for all sorts of things, it's been in the scope world for many, many years, is that when you're trying to get the finest definition, then more light doesn't actually help. There's like too much glare, you get a torch shining in your face, you don't get the same sort of image. So it's a little bit like that sort of stuff, where you get glare because of that. But it's also, and I've had it explained to me in the fact of when you have a larger lens and you're getting the same image in through that lens, but there is whether it's refractions, whether it's a piece of dust in there or whatever it is, in that image there can be tiny bits of glare that you don't see as glare, but what you do see is a lack of definition. So you take that out by reducing down to all that you actually need to see the image through, and you take all the other light noise out of the situation. The other side of things is just more light. More light takes away the dark. When you're looking for contrast, like a little black spike in the dust out there, in the paddock out there, and you've got more light everywhere, you get more light there as well. So actually reducing the light down to the amount you need to have good clarity, and certainly you can go too far and get to where you start to lose your image, but by reducing it down to where you actually end up with still having the bright but having more of the dark essentially, so you get more contrast. And that's certainly one of the differences that we saw there. I actually, out of that thing, it's the first time I've seen that happen dramatically. Sam with a lot bigger lens had less quality of vision, very bright but less quality vision, and you can fix that a little bit by zooming back and reducing your image so you're not washing things out so much with your zoom in, that sort of stuff. But really the main way to fix it in that situation would have been to have a small aperture on the front of it so there was less light coming into it. I should say with these little things, this sort of stuff, it does matter in not just reducing the amount of light coming in front of the lens, but the further you out you take it, which this one is right out here, actually reduces it even further and gives you even more control. So what it actually did is the notable feature of that shoot was that not only the quality of the glass in this scope, this March scope, not only the fact that it was centered in this scope, so you're always looking dead through the center of it, which is a very nice feature of this sort of scope, but also running a light reducer, is what I would call it, right up the front here, meant that I had simply better vision. Very unusual situation to be in, that sort of stuff. Moderate light, all sorts of different situations. The mirage, moving things around, that would have made it as well. And I should touch on that. This does not, nothing cuts through mirage. The light reducers can make mirage a little easier to see because you do have this sharper focus point, and because you raise your contrasts, get rid of the other blur to a certain degree. But you can't get through mirage. Mirage is the effect of air densities that are different to each other out in through your field of view. And unless you've got a tube that goes all the way out to target, now you can't cut through it, but you can make it easy to see with high definition and that sort of stuff. And that is certainly one of the things that can help in that situation. Anyway, those are the three things I wanted to touch on here. Did the rifle overall, by the way, the caliber, that little tiny bullet, that 20 cal bullet, way out there, did really, really well. And we didn't get on target, yes. It's one of those shoots where I'm very happy with the result. I don't look for more in that situation. That group was really good. It performed really well. Listen, a different day, hold my mouth a different angle, yeah, you'd get onto target. But it did surprisingly well. And it was also about the fact that we could pull it off as a team. And in this case, I spotted some of them. There's still a whole heap that I didn't spot that Sam did spot. So listen, I'm not trying to say that I could have done it by myself by any means, but surprisingly well. And I suppose I'd finish off with, yeah, that first shot. See what we got. Just missing the target like that did there. Hey, we didn't see it. We weren't looking that close at target. It was in the fashion of not expecting to be quite that close on the first shot with this sort of thing. But it didn't hit anyway, but it was very, very close. So it performed very well. Anyway, guys, that's this overview on those things and this little rifle. Shot really well, really like it. Hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks very much for checking in, and we'll catch you next time.